Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to Organizing in the Time of COVID. This is Firoz Manji from Daraja Press. I have a very interesting guest join me today. June Barrett is a home care worker, an organizer and leader with the We Dream in Black program of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, as well as the Miami Workers Centers. She is a queer Jamaican immigrant who has done domestic work in the US for over 19 years. And she's one of the 2019 Dorothy Bolden Fellows with the National Domestic Worker Alliance. June is an activist through and through, has been involved in many different campaigns, and has been her story has been told in many news outlets, including Teen Vogue, Money Magazine, and Red Pepper. So I'm really very pleased to have June join us today, especially as the voices of domestic workers rarely get sufficient exposure, and especially in the time of COVID, in the time of massive uprisings as a result of the killing of Floyd and the activities of the immigration authorities. June, a warm welcome. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. So June, you're in this program that you call the We Dream in Black, part of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so We Dream in Black is an initiative within the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And in about 2015, the Alliance noticed that they weren't reaching many Black.
Oh, we keep losing you. Hello, we seem to have lost you. Hello, June. Hello, June. Hello. We seem to have lost you, June. Let me see if we can find a way to bring you back in again. Nope. Okay, she's gone offline. I hope she'll be able to come back. Well, while we're waiting for her, let me give you a little bit more information about her. She's participated in the Women's March and actively canvassed South Florida during the 2016 presidential elections. She's been a leading spokesman in the Metoo movement, sharing her own experiences of verbal and physical sexual abuse. And I'm very pleased to say she appears to be back. So if I can get her to come in. June, sorry about that. I don't know whether the trouble is at my end or at yours. But anyway, tell us about the We Dream in Black initiative.
Yeah, so We Dream in Black is an initiative within the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And in 2015, the Alliance noticed that there was not a lot of Black workers, present in the Alliance or in many of the affiliates. So they brought on Alicia Garza. And Alicia Garza in 2016 started the program at the Alliance called We Dream in Black. And We Dream in Black is an organization that advocates for the rights of Black domestic workers, and also to help us to build collective power within the alliance. And a lot of people ask, why did you need a special place within the alliance for Black women? Yes, we do. Because Black domestic workers, we have a totally different experience from other domestic workers because our work is deeply rooted in the legacy of slavery. And so I was at the first meeting in North Carolina, and today there are Redreaming Black chapters across the United States of America. So,
Yeah.
and it is a welcoming space for such a time like now.
So you've worked as a domestic worker for nearly 20 years. How did you get involved in the alliance?
In 2016, the Miami Workers Center started organizing domestic workers. But prior to that, they they were organizing in New York because NDAA started at the World Social Forum in Atlanta, Georgia in 2007. So they started organizing in New York, and 10 years later, they won a Bill of Rights. And then they started winning Bill of Rights in two other states. So in 2016, the Miami Workers Center got a call asking us to start organizing workers here, domestic workers on the ground. And I remember when they called me, they didn't call me back for the next 6 months. And I called and I said, what's going on? And they said, well, you're not a domestic worker. You are a certified nurse and assistant. But I said, but I work in the home. And they called me back that July to ask me if I would come to an assembly they were having, and if I would be brave enough to talk about, sexual harassment that I endured while working as a domestic worker. And I said yes. And that was the beginning of change for me, and the beginning of change also for the movement.
Yes. So is this is an issue that domestic workers frequently face, and that is sexual violence and attacks.
Yes, yes, it is an issue, but a lot of these workers, they never spoke about it. We talk about it among each other, but to come forward and to say, I'm experiencing this. Remember, it's a situation of power over. In my case, I kept silent. And the last one that it happens to me, I was trying to tell the daughter. And then that very Friday, in front of her, her dad grabbed me on the breast and she laughed about it. And it was then that I realized I have no place to turn. It was then that I realized that this is something that I will have to fight on my own. And eventually I was able to move on to find work somewhere else. So yes, it was a big problem, but things have shifted since Me Too.
Yes, but at the same time, we're now in a situation of a pandemic, COVID-19, which in the US seems to have become uncontrolled, rather like in the UK, in fact. Um, how are domestic workers coping with this situation? Are they losing jobs? What's going on?
The first week of the lockdown, we have 8 domestic workers losing their jobs, you know, and we thought that it wouldn't get worse, but it did get worse. And domestic workers across the United States of America were calling their organizers, are calling into affiliates and saying, they told me not to come back. I can't clean homes anymore. Or the families said, go home and come back. We'll call you. And this happened too. There were families that say to their worker, um, you have to live in. We don't want you to go back and forth. And some workers were really forced to make that really gut wrenching choice and leaving their families unprotected at home, even believing that this lockdown will end soon. So they literally left their families at home while they're locked away with their employers and their family. And this caused domestic workers was to, to be overworked and working more hours than what they were supposed to be working. And also, what we did when we saw what was happening, immediately the National Domestic Workers Alliance um, came up with the idea that we must stand behind these women. But how could we? How can we? We're not a service organization. So the brilliant move came when we launched the coronavirus fund for domestic workers. And initially, we wanted to raise $4 million to help at least 10,000 workers. But thank God, today we raised over 20 something $1 million and we are helping workers. And even the third week in March, even before 1 cent was raised for that fund, the Alliance sent $5,000 to each affiliate to buy food, to, for families, diaper for babies, and so we had this, this jump start. The Alliance had this jump start, and so we were able to help a lot of the workers on the ground in different parts of the United States of America. And we are still helping people because we are doing this survey now to find out how many, and it's specifically for Black immigrant domestic workers, right? And this survey is really helping us to look at, the demographics, and to look and to see which worker is most, affected by, that by the pandemic, and, giving bringing resources to these women. And we also gave every person who is doing the survey, we gave them a $25 gift card, and also they will be entered in, to get this $400 grant. And we have gone beyond. Organizers like myself has gone beyond, you know, helping with diapers, sending food to people's house. So we have been doing our own outreaching along with the Alliance.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Um, Perhaps afterwards, you can give me the URL for where people can who are watching the show can contribute to the fund. So that would be great. Now, uh, not only are you faced with the effects of COVID, uh, but the whole of 48 cities across the US, there has been an unprecedented uprising over the last few days as a result of the killing of George Floyd. Um, I'm, could you tell us about how you were affected, how domestic workers in Miami were affected? What is the situation for people there?
Well, as I said, I mean, Black people here, and people of color, we, as I said, we are faced with police brutality like every single day. I organize in Liberty City, which is an inner city in the north of Miami, and this is police violence and brutality every day. A lot of people are still angry about this child, a child called Trayvon Martin that was killed. And why we're so angry is because every day when this happened, no one is being held accountable for these murders. And so people are tired. People are fighting. You have to know what's happening in the Black community. Right now, we are just tired. The Black folks at NDW, we have a blackout for a week. We are tired. We are tired of what is going on in our communities. We are dying from COVID-19 at an alarming rate. Most of the women that I'm surveying don't have, I mean, health insurance. They don't have food. I've heard stories that I'm working in my computer and the tears kept falling. This is America. We are tired. We are fed up. And I mean, things are happening in these communities every day that it do not you don't hear about it because it's not on CNN or Fox News. It's not there. But people are suffering like every day. Black people are fed up. We are tired. We are tired. And people are tired. So what's happening across the United States of America? I saw it coming a long time ago. I saw it coming a long time ago, right? As Bob Marley said, um, you know, until the philosophy. I think that these were words by Haile Selassie, and later on, penned into a song by Bob Marley. Until the philosophy that holds one race, superior and another inferior. Everywhere is war. There will be no lasting peace. And this is America. And then the head of this country, is, instigating violence to just one group of people. One group of people is a thug, and the other group of people, you know, they're nice people. People are angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. We're just angry right now.
So how are you able to channel this anger into some form of contestation, some way of beginning the process of building another kind of world rather than the one that America insists on?
How do we, we have been having conversation around anti-blackness within my org and outside of the org. And we also have to understand that racism is not about just white and black. As black people, we also experience not just colorism, but racism within a movement that we are fighting for rights for marginalized and the most vulnerable among us. And yet within the movement, we have to be talking about anti-blackness and giving anti-blackness classes and all of that, which is a table that I don't want to sit at. Because if I'm going to be organizing with you, and because you are Latinx, or because you are Filipino, or because you have a lighter skin color than I am, and you're going to look at me and you're going to say that I'm lazy, or you're going to look at me and say I can't talk to you because they told me that black people ain't good. And so we're dealing with that within our own movement, spaces. And so I don't know, how are we going to move away from that when we are being pulled and scrutinized from all angles, from all different angles, by different nationalities, right? As a black person, you're just totally, demonized, and no one wants to be your friend because black people ain't good. And that's what I've been seeing, even that from people I organize on Facebook who are Filipino, who are Latino. I'm still seeing that coming. So is there hope? I look to the young people who are in the streets. I can no longer go in the street. But what I saw over the weekend, what I've been reading and I'm listening to, and there are a group of young people in Miami, the Dream Defenders and Power You Center for Social Change. I look to them. I look to them to bring the change. I mean, I'm aging now. I can't be in the streets with a bad hip running around. So I'm looking to these young people, and I believe they're the ones who is going to usher in this change that we're looking for. They're the ones that I have hope. Of course, I'm a woman of faith. I have hope in higher power, but I also have that hope, deep-seated hope, that these young people will usher us into a new tomorrow where race won't matter anymore. But it's not going to happen now. The older folks, they will have to, transition out of this world.
I mean, yesterday I participated in a whole day interviews with many people across America and elsewhere. But the message was what I found really interesting was the extent to which people are organizing self-help in terms of mutual aid, establishing networks of self-help. Is that something that is happening in Miami as well?
Yeah, that is something that is happening in Miami also at the moment. And
I
that has been happening for a long time, but it's more so at this moment for COVID-19 and for these very troublesome times that we are going through. Yeah.
right. One of the things that we hear about that domestic workers often face is harassment by immigration services, by ICE. Is this something that you have experienced in your work?
Oh yes, that's something that I experienced in my work. I remember standing up and fighting for a domestic worker who was here in the U.S. She came in from I think it was Honduras, and she was a political activist in our country, and she came seeking asylum, and she did got a permission to stay, but that was reversed. After 2016 under this current administration. And I remembered us, not just Miami Workers Center, but, Florida New Majority, Flick, Power U, Dream Defenders. We all came together and advocate and fight for Reina. And Reina was given 2 years, and her 2 years is about expiring now. And we are getting ready once more to fight to get her to stay, because going back to her country is she cannot. It's not an option. And in fact, she is suffering from cancer, working at a university here, and she believed it was the chemicals from cleaning that gave her this rare form of cancer. And ICE did not care. ICE did not care that she could not get this treatment in her own country. They did not care. So that's why we are fighting for her, and not just her. We have a domestic worker who is in a church right now in New York, and she has been there since 2016. And we are also fighting for her. And every Monday and sometimes Wednesday, we have what we call a circle of protection, where different organizations come together to go to the ICE detention center in Miami, in Miramar, which is a little bit outside of Miami. And we cannot get close because the police won't allow us. But we are on the opposite side of the road with donut and coffee. And when it was before social distancing, a hug to all the women and the men who were going in to hear what their fate was. So we have been supporting, undocumented workers, and fighting to keep them from getting deported. In fact, I was one of the many speakers who was at the government center downtown, speaking out and speaking up about why Miami should remain a sanctuary city. I benefited from Miami when it was a sanctuary city, but unfortunately we lost that day. They decided that Miami should no longer be a sanctuary city. And so domestic workers are being hunted down, and put in detention centers here in Florida, and even sometimes, somewhere else in the United States. And I must talk about the work that NDAA is doing, because NDAA protect immigrant workers. We organize for everyone, the Coronavirus Fund, every domestic worker, woman or men, because men too do that work. If irrespective of their immigration status, they get that gift card, and they also get whatever resources that we have available. And so we have an initiative within the alliance called We Belong Together, and this has been in the alliance for many years. And the work that they are doing at the border down there in Mexico is really powerful work. And also, let us never forget that when children were being held in cages, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Families Belong Together was one of the first organization on the ground to help these children. Let us never forget the work that NDAA is doing to protect immigrant families, immigrant children, and undocumented domestic workers.
That's extraordinary. Just help me understand the nature of the alliance. I mean, one of the things internationally has always been a challenge is the unionizing of domestic workers, because they're rarely recognized as workers as such, merely as servants. So tell us more about what the alliance does. I mean, is it a trade union? Is it able to negotiate? Is it what kind of organizing does it provide for domestic workers?
We are not a union, just a straight up advocacy organization. And what the National Domestic Workers Alliance does is to fight for domestic workers to be included in labor protection, and also for us to work with just dignity, because we do not have any dignity because the work is not seen as real work. We are not protected under any labor laws, as you know. In the 30s, when they were drafting those laws, domestic workers were purposely left out because they didn't see the work as real work. And what the alliance was able to do when it was formed in 2007, to date, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, organizing in across the United States, we were able to get nine states to to get a Bill of Rights, a National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. In New York was the first. It took New York 10 years. Then California, it took them another 10 years, but we got it. Is it a perfect bill? No. And also in 7 other states, and most recently Philadelphia and the city of Seattle. But what we are doing in July of this year, Senator Kamala Harris and Representative Jayapal, along with the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, Aijen Poo, countless domestic workers, and myself, we were in DC where we introduced a national federal domestic workers bill of rights. And this new bill of rights will give all 2.2 million domestic workers across the United States the protection that they will need. It's in the House, and it was moving at a speed, but because of COVID-19, there's a little standstill. But we will start more organizing and mobilizing and go back to DC to advocate for this bill. And we have a lot of support for this bill. We have a lot of support. Let's see what happens when it gets over to the Senate. What was amazing about this bill was that we had a workers' council within the alliance, where we have a representative from the home care industry, from the nanny industry, from the house cleaning industry, and also from what do you call it now? Women who work from some kind of a platform. And so we came together. I was on the first workers' council. So we came together and we spoke about what we want to see happen to the domestic workers industry. What is happening now? What do we want to change? And so it was women and men too, like myself, who sat at that table and wrote, wrote that bill. Of course, the policy team goes in and, recreate languages and, and so the bill, thank God at last, is in the House. And if this bill, I should say, when this bill is passed, it will totally change the way that domestic work is done, and the way that domestic workers will be treated, because there is so much protection for for these vulnerable women. Yeah.
Can you give us some kind of ideas of the kind of things that you want to see? We talk about minimum wage. What else are we talking about?
We're talking about basic protections, like the rights to paid sick days, Many domestic workers, having to go to work, turn up at work sick because they cannot afford to take a day even to go to the doctor because they would lose, pay. We're talking about, we're talking about, you know, withholding social security, all the taxes, withholding that for domestic workers. We're talking about if you're working through like an agency, provide health care for your worker. We talk about, you know, 15, $20 an hour. There are still workers who are getting, when you look at the South, 7.25 or $8 an hour. That's not a livable wage. That's not a livable wage. We are talking about, you know, um, not stealing, workers' wages. We're talking about not just firing a worker without giving that worker at least 2 weeks notice. Depends on how long the person is with you. And one of the biggest demon is sexual harassment. And we're grabbing that demon and we are fighting it head on. So that is in there that, if a domestic worker should come forth and report sexual harassment, then there should be, they should not be afraid of retaliation. And not only that, there will be resources available for the woman so she does not, our man, yeah, men get sexually harassed too, that person could, be placed, or stay at home or be placed in a safe environment and not having to worry about losing their wages. We talk about living work. Like I was talking to a worker last week who was driving all the way from Atlanta to Miami. She was living with a client for 13 years. The client died that morning, and the son came over and said, "You got to get out." We are changing that. We are, in the new law, if you're living with a client for over a certain amount of time, you give that client enough time. Not telling that person after 13 years they have to drive back to Miami in the middle of the night. So there are a lot of things in that bill that will literally, just change the way that we do this work. And I must say, I'm going to let you say, and I
Yeah.
say this from a global stage in Reykjavik, I must remind people who say that domestic work is not work and that is not real. Domestic work is work. It is real work. It is the work that makes the world turn. And domestic workers contribute significantly to the economy of every country that we work in. So that's a myth. That's a myth. And again, that's an idea that is deeply rooted in the legacy of white supremacy and slavery. And we're going to mash that down.
And of patriarchy as well.
And patriarchy.
Yeah, yeah. So how confident are you that most of this, the demands that you're putting into this, will get through?
Well, already I must say that we have some kind of organizations that are already gearing up, for a lawsuit. Um, One of the biggest demon in this country is the agencies that abuse and terrorize workers. They too are going to put up a fight. But I must say that if you care about a human being, if you care about, you know, giving human being basic, you know, dignity, right, and respect, that you wouldn't want to fight this bill. Why shouldn't we get the same benefit that other workers get? You know, I used to work as a 16-hour shift before I resigned uh, last February. I used to work a 16-hour shift, having a 92 and a 93-year-old couple, a man and a woman. And when I get to work at 5 in the evening, remember, I have two babies, right? Taken care of. I have to make sure that and I was the one who was responsible, even though we have two nurses in the days, I was the only one at night. I was responsible for and they have a housekeeper. I was responsible for the day to day running of the house. I was responsible to make sure the medicines were delivered on time. I was responsible to make sure that the medicines were administered properly. I was also in charge of their nutrition, right? They are, I'm not there, but they're still alive. Why? Because I gave them the best care possible. And it's a lot of work. Taking care of the elderly is a lot of work that require you to think. One mistake, I always say that, one mistake, and that can, cause great harm to your client and even death. So it's, why is it now? Now it is real work. Try taking care of a child. It is real work. If it wasn't real work, you would have taken your babies into the office, or when you're doing surgery at the hospital, take your child there. When your parents are sick, you know, stay home and look after them. How dare you say it's not real work?
Yeah, yeah. So, if there was one main message you would like to uh, put out to people who are watching this program, um, what would that be?
What would that be? To become our allies. Domestic workers are suffering. I was in Cape Town, South Africa, at the International Domestic Workers Federation gathering, and it was there were so many tears because we are treated the same way across the world. We're seen as like the least educated, the worst among the society, and so I'm asking people, if you are watching this program right now, become an ally for domestic worker. If you have a domestic worker, respect that worker. Respect that worker. And also, if you're on social media, could you please hashtag the National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights? We're looking for support. We are asking you to echo our voices, and also to respect the work of domestic workers.
That's a great message. I really want to thank you, June, for taking time, because I know that you're an organizer and you're busy. But I'm full of admiration for the work that you've been doing, and
Thank you.
I hope people will give generously and draw attention to the excellent work that you and your organization are doing. And I'd really
Thank you.
like to thank you for
Thank you.
joining us here on organizing in the time of COVID.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So
Okay,
I'm going to, yes, the National Domestic Workers Alliance.org.
national national domestic, one word.
Yeah, National Domestic Workers Alliance.org. Thank you for having me. And, I'm a friend to everyone who gives, a platform
Make,
to domestic workers. I say that. So
make
thank you.
sure make sure I've got this right. Is that right?
National, that's right. Yes, thank you. Thank you
Okay,
for having me, and thank you for helping me to echo voices.
that's
Thank you.
great to just a real pleasure for us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, bye.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
bye. Well, voices that are very rarely heard. The amazing June Barrett from the We Dream in Black program of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Tomorrow we will be again online again, and an unusual guest tomorrow morning. We will be interviewing uh, Willie Mutunga, the former uh, Chief Justice of Kenya, to discuss the situation of COVID in Kenya and the way in which the government there is dealing with or not with the pandemic. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to you joining us on further um, programs. So this is Firoz Manji, Daraja Press, signing off for now.